What are you doing in the dumpster, man? Get out of there, man.
Hey, remember earlier this year when I talked about how GTA 4 was originally going to be a PlayStation 3 exclusive, and how, according to Michael Pachter, it only became a non-exclusive because of Microsoft intervening? You can watch my video on that topic to find out more about this. Because plans changed and the game became non-exclusive to any particular console, it was then decided that Rockstar would do a new exclusive project for the PS3. And that's how we get to where we're at now. Now, before we continue, bear in mind that this is based on the words of Michael Pachter, an industry analyst who is known for making predictions, many of which don't always come true, but the information he provided in this article feels more oddly specific than just a random prediction, and I don't see why he'd state this as if it were fact. I don't know what his original source was on this, but according to Pachter, Rockstar was working on a zombie game at one point. This title was in its early planning stages around 2006, but two things happened that year that resulted in the project being halted. First, Dead Rising was released on August 8, 2006. Now this didn't totally cause Rockstar to stop working on the game, they probably knew that there would be some competition, and depending on when this game's planning phase began, they probably already knew that Dead Rising was about to come out. But the second and apparently final nail in the coffin for this zombie title might have been the announcement of Left 4 Dead in December of 2006. According to Pachter, Rockstar probably realized that they were now facing a market that was about to become saturated with zombie games. They probably wanted to do something that would have been a little different at the time, but unfortunately, Capcom and Valve beat them to the punch. Pachter stated that Rockstar seriously did not want to compete with Valve, saying that someone had said, "What can we possibly do that will be any better than what Valve has done?" I have no clue if anyone at Rockstar actually said this or if Pachter's just generalizing what somebody at Rockstar might have been thinking, but it's an interesting quote nonetheless. Would Rockstar truly find Valve in the 2000s to be serious competition? It got me thinking, too. Let's say that Dead Rising or Left 4 Dead never came out, or let's say that Rockstar didn't mind competing with those two titles and decided to go ahead with the production of their own zombie game. How similar or different would it have been to those two existing titles? I've never played Dead Rising, so I can't comment on what that game is like, but I love Left 4 Dead. And I'm one of those people who would gladly take Left 4 Dead 3 over Half-Life 3. But as much as I love the game, there isn't really much of a story to it. It's more of a cooperative experience. It's great for you and your friends to mess around in, but besides that, there's not really much to it in terms of a narrative. I think there was probably more fan fiction of Ellis and Nick than what the game's designers even came up with. But I doubt that a game being made in 2006 with Dan Houser still working there and before they went all in on focusing on their game's online modes would release a game without some kind of story mode. Most likely a zombie game out of them would actually be plot driven. I'm sure it would have its own version of a horde mode and maybe even an online multiplayer component depending on if it would have been released after GTA 4, but the main selling points of the game would have to be a story, right? So knowing that, I almost feel like Pachter's quote about Rockstar not thinking they can do something better than Valve to be a bit weird. Unless maybe they thought that Left 4 Dead was going to be more story-focused than it turned out to be. We don't know if it would have been better than Left 4 Dead, but I think it would have been different enough to be able to distinguish itself from Left 4 Dead. Also, we all know that Rockstar mostly does open-world titles nowadays, and the next thing I was wondering is if this game would have been open-world or not. Part of me would like to think so, because the two open-world titles in this genre that I've played, Undead Nightmare and Days Gone, have been really enjoyable experiences. And despite only one of those being by Rockstar, both are heavily narrative-focused. At the same time, I feel like there's a chance that this game could have been a bit more linear and more like titles such as Manhunt or Max Payne. If anything, maybe Rockstar deciding to just not enter a saturated market was enough for them to decide to not go ahead with this game. And remember, zombies really blew up about 10 years ago too. I mean, it was ridiculous, seriously. I remember from 2009 to around 2011, zombie stuff was freaking everywhere, and it got to the point where it was just annoying. I don't know if this would have been a good thing or a bad thing for a Rockstar zombie title, though some would probably argue that it would make the company look like they're just following trends rather than creating a game that's a truly unique experience. But clearly, Rockstar never gave up on the idea. Even though they released a Western during the time that zombies were big, would they go and release a DLC pack later for that same year? But even before Red Dead Redemption, GTA 4 even had some elements of zombies. Visibly, there's a billboard for an in-universe movie and a video game called Z Resurrection. I used to not think much of it, but depending on how far along Rockstar got with the planning and production of their own zombie title, maybe those two models could have been assets or early design renders for their game. It might have a similar look to GTA 4, but that would be because GTA 4 would have been well into production by 2006, so they probably would have been using the same tools and the Rage engine to create the game, provided that the zombie game even made it past any of the early planning stages, of course. Also, in October of 2008, Rockstar did a special event for GTA 4's multiplayer. Clearly, it was going to be very zombie-focused, zombie-inspired, you know, the whole thing. This was where you could unlock this skin for multiplayer, and also the Let Sleeping Rockstars Lie achievement. I am really happy to find screenshots of this at least, since Rockstar clearly put a ton of effort into it, and the idea of zombies was something that they obviously found to be very fun at the time. Could you imagine if GTA 4 had its own undead nightmare like how Red Dead Redemption got? Plus, in case you forgot, Eurogamer did an article in which they spoke to data miners Tez2 and Yan2295, who helped them to understand a bit about Rockstar's original plans for the now cancelled single-player DLC for GTA 5. According to Tez, one of these expansions was going to be a zombie apocalypse. In any event, whatever the reason was that Rockstar decided to stop working on a zombie game as a PS3 exclusive, it appears that they then decided to work on Agent instead. Now, if you've read the Polygon article from a while back about how difficult Agent's development was, you might be wondering, wait a minute, wasn't Agent being worked on first? And you'd be absolutely right. Rockstar acquired Angel Studios in November of 2002, and either later that year or in early 2003, they had them working on an early prototype of Agent for the PS2 and Xbox. And for the next 2 years, the San Diego studio worked their butts off on the project until it got cancelled. Then some of the assets and elements ended up being reused in the studio's new next-gen project, Red Dead Redemption. The article mentions nothing about a zombie game, and I'm sure it would have if that was something the studio was told to work on by the Housers. My guess is that this zombie game was going to be a Rockstar North project instead. It probably would have been the next title for the Scottish studio after GTA 4, and after deciding to not compete with Dead Rising and Left 4 Dead, Rockstar then probably decided to resurrect the idea for Agent. But this time, instead of making the San Diego studio do the work on it, they decided to have their flagship North studio work on it as a PS3 title. But what am I talking about? This isn't a video about an unreleased spy game, this is about an unreleased zombie game. One that I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't make it too far into development. When it comes to unreleased Rockstar games, this is one that I haven't really seen too many people talking about before. It almost seems like Michael Pachter was probably the only one outside of Rockstar who even knew anything about it. That's why I don't think it would have made it very far into development before they decided to end the production of it, in order to work on Agent. And keep in mind, this would have been a PS3 exclusive. So had they actually made this game and had it actually come out, it would have been only on PlayStation. I still wonder what they would have had in mind for this game though. Would it have been open world or not? Would the story be serious or would it be kinda goofy? And would it possibly be considered like a spiritual successor to Manhunt? Because if you think about it, a game like that would probably feature a lot of strong gore, but they would be able to get away with it because, oh, it's just zombies, they're not actually people. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and happy Halloween as well.